All right, so it looks like the Detroit Pistons are going to find their man, their president of the basketball operations. And it's a familiar name to some. Trajan Langdon.
The Alaskan Assassin. One of Duke's finest basketball players. They've had a lot, but
arguably the greatest nickname in the history of sports.
It's a good one.
It's really, it's fantastic. It's up there. It's probably my top 10. I love the nickname. I think it's fantastic, and I hate Duke. But Trajan Langdon.
But you don't hate Alaska.
I don't hate Alaska,
Yeah, okay.
and we know Doug loves Alaska. But the Alaskan Assassin just sounds amazing.
That is.
His dad, I guess his father was a professor.
In Alaska?
Yeah, like Alaska Anchorage. So that's why he grew up in Alaska. But he's going to be the next president of basketball operations. Spent time in Duke in the mid to late 90s. Played there. He was a three-point
assassin.
He was an assassin. He was a really good three-point shooter. Played a few years in the NBA. Played overseas, and then began his career as a scout. And eventually ends up working with the Pelicans, which is where the Pistons are allegedly getting him from, where he was the GM of the Pelicans. Hired back in 2019, where he worked alongside this is from the Detroit Free Press article, worked alongside Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations David Griffin. He was officially hired days after the franchise won the lottery and selected Zion Williamson number 1 overall. When he was hired, Anthony Davis had already demanded a trade, which was facilitated in July of 2019 with the Lakers, who sent 3 first-round picks, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and Brandon Ingram to New Orleans.
It's a good haul.
It's a pretty good haul. And they've made the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. They got bounced in the first round each time. But he is also partially responsible for helping the Pelicans swing a trade to bring in C.J. McCollum and Larry Nance from Portland. So he's got a little bit of a track record at the executive level, and I think pretty widely respected.
Yeah, one of the up and comers that people thought would get a job eventually, if not a bunch of interviews at least.
Exactly. So now the Pistons went the route of going with Troy Weaver to kind of be the GM of this team to wheel and deal. And we're still not sure what the real role is for the president of basketball operations. What we do know is that it'll be a higher up role than what Troy Weaver is currently. So what does this mean for the Pistons moving forward? Does this mean that, okay, first thing we got to take care of is Troy Weaver, thank you for your service. We'll see you later. Or does you have a conversation with Troy Weaver and it says, hey, listen, we're going to take the wheeling and dealing kind of off your plate. What we want you to do is scout because you're kind of elite at that. At least you were prior. And maybe we can still get something out of it. And we think that it'll be beneficial to both of us. Does that happen? Do they find another role for him? But I want to know what his role is defined. When we're talking about president of basketball operations, I'm thinking about somebody who is the guy in charge, like Scott Harris is with the Tigers, right? I know they hired a GM, but Scott Harris is the guy I'm looking at who's making the deals. It's like Dave Dombrowski when he was with the Tigers. I think technically he also had the general manager title there, but Al Avila was the guy underneath him. But it was Dave Dombrowski that made all the moves and made the big decisions. So I'm looking at this, and I'm hoping that's the case with the Pistons. That Trajan Langdon is the guy who will make the decision on who they draft, who they trade, all player acquisitions, the 10-day contracts. Hopefully it's no longer, bringing up another, hey, who's that guy? Pistons led the league, and who's that guy? With like 50 of them this past year.
It was crazy.
It was crazy.
No, but that's what we've been led to believe, though. Whoever they hired as the president of basketball operations was going to have ultimate power throughout the team and the organization. Now, it's gone to the point in the league where, and this is almost any sport, where job titles don't even matter anymore. Just tell me the power structure. So if the president of the basketball operations has control over anyone underneath him, that includes the GM, then Trajan Langdon has the power to let go and relieve anyone of their duties if he doesn't see it fits with his vision or whatever. So as far as the Trajan Langdon hiring, that's not official yet, but it's being reported by Wojnarowski from ESPN, that I like the hire. Now, people are going to connect the fact that he had Arm Tellem as his agent when he was a player. I got to tell you, man, Arm Tellem's been connected to almost everyone in the league. It's going to be hard not to find someone not connected to him. And if you want to just eliminate that, then you're eliminating a possible really good president, right? So I wouldn't do this. So I don't really hold anything against that. I do worry a little bit because did Arm get in Tom Gores' ear and say, hey, I know Trajan Langdon, but why wouldn't you? Because that's a resource you can ask him about. But I got to tell you, if he comes in here, Trajan Langdon, and doesn't let Troy Weaver go, perception is going to be very bad for this guy. And I personally, for me too as well, because I think Troy Weaver, your time has come and gone here in Detroit. Doesn't mean you're not going to be a good GM somewhere else one day or whatever. You still don't have use in the league. But for Detroit, it's time to move on from that era. Trajan Langdon, go get another GM if you want a GM underneath you.
I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting a mistake was made. And when Troy Weaver came to this team, he came in hot. Right before the draft, remember all the trades they made on the draft night, and then you had the 3 picks, right? I'm like, wow, that's a lot going. That's kind of cool. I like that. Like, I was in favor of Troy Weaver. Like, he can build this thing, okay. But as we've seen the years go on, no, he didn't build it. So I'm admitting I was wrong because I was a Troy Weaver guy. I think you were a Troy Weaver guy.
Yep.
But you gotta cut bait when you have to, and obviously it's been time for a while here to do it. Now they've got the opportunity. If Trajan Langdon's on board, I agree with you. Perception's a lot. And if you want to win over the fan base, you're going to have to make a move that the fan base has been calling for.
And it's not like he wouldn't be justified. The team won 14. They won 14 games this last year.
They regressed.
Troy Weaver, he just can't build a roster. I think he's been given enough time. Now, he did a good job creating cap space. Thank you for your service. Now I want Trajan Langdon to use that cap space. Now, whether that means bringing in Brandon Ingram from the Pelicans, an organization where Trajan Langdon just came from, or bringing in a Julius Randle, whoever it is, they need to upgrade the talent. If they're trading the 5th overall pick, I want Trajan Langdon making all the decisions. We don't need Troy Weaver here anymore.
248-539-9797 is a telephone number. So the news broke late yesterday that Trajan Langdon, Adrian Wojnarowski had the story that Trajan Langdon is going to be the next president of basketball operations with the Pistons. That's great. Okay, they got the guy. I'm all in on the guy, but what has to be the first move that he makes? Is it simply firing Troy Weaver? Is it having a vision that, okay, does he need to have a conversation with Cade Cunningham? Does he need to have a conversation with Monty Williams? What's the first thing you want him to do as the president of basketball operations?